So welcome to the Tooele Happy Hour. How are you doing, Paul?
Good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite, and hope I can provide some answers to any questions you have, or help you carry on the discussion tonight.
Yeah, well, obviously we want to have the floor open to anyone in the audience who's watching. I have mostly two questions. How's the state of law enforcement in the county? Does it feel pretty firm, pretty sturdy, or is there any needs that the community can fulfill for you?
This is a great place to police. There's no question. My entire career has been policing one element of Tooele County or another, and the community and citizen support is top notch. And so even when we were going through the whole George Floyd stuff, where people were getting negative, really getting negative on cops through the media, this was the place to be, because our citizens really stepped up. There were, for a while, I don't know that my guys could buy their own lunch, because they'd go to pay, and people would have already paid. I had, a bit of a soda pop addict, and so there for a while, I just had to start buying the person behind me's drink, because it wasn't right that I was getting so many free drinks, because when I'd get up there to pay, they would say, someone already took care of you. And no, it was a challenging time, and it's on the downhill slope of it. At least we're hoping that it continues to go downhill, but it also brought out the best in people.
Yeah. I do think it's on the downhill slope as well. I think that, well, honest opinion, I think Black Lives Matter shot themselves in the foot.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Literally, right?
A
couple times.
Oh, well, no, they came out, first of all, they came out in general en masse against all of law enforcement, all of society, when they would have been much better off just pinpointing, finding where losses were, and pinpointing that and saying, all right, we will focus on that and work that out. But they came out en masse, and then even if they didn't riot, they fostered an environment where rioting was going to happen in their name.
I thought that was the media who kind of edged that on.
Well, they weren't alone in that, but I think Black Lives Matter, one thing they didn't do is they didn't come out and say, you guys stop rioting, stop arson, stop looting, this isn't us. And had they policed themselves in those moments, I think we'd see Black Lives Matter as maybe even a political party right now.
Yeah, and they because the message wasn't. They had a pretty decent message, but the problem is, yes, the foundation of the message is not at fault here. It is, I guess you could say, well, all lives matter, because they do, and so just the throwing in the black almost creates a little bit of a us against them kind of a foundation. And so I guess in that regard, it does kind of set forth a precedence, or a connotation that that's all they're for. But they could have done things a lot different, and probably been a little more effective in carrying on, and being something that lasts for years to come.
For sure. Imagine if they'd have left one of their protests with the streets cleaner than when they showed up.
Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah.
That would have
been media attention. Yeah.
That would have shocked everyone.
And I've seen a lot of them come out and say, hey, stop the rioting. A lot of them stopped the rioting and the looting and whatnot. The media wasn't their friend at that moment when they were doing that kind of stuff. They're not getting clickbait with, stop the looting. The looting is what got clickbait. And the militant version of a protest is always more exciting. click on than just a peaceful.
No one watches
Coagulation.
CNN for the what is it? What's the one that shows the congressional hall? Not CPAC. The one that shows Congress in session. The channel where you just watch Congress.
C-SPAN.
Oh.
Yes, C-SPAN. No one watches CNN for C-SPAN. You know, it kind of injured him.
Well, ours went well. I mean, you guys did a great job hosting ours. So, I mean, kudos to you guys when you did that.
Well, and kudos to their leadership as well, because when they approached the city and myself, just the conversations we had with the organizers of that, it set the tone for a peaceful gathering and a protest that was peaceful.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes I think there is room for a protest to be one of those surprise, you know, I guess flash mobs style. Those flash mobs, an awful word for it, but kind of flash style protest. But in something like that, where you're protesting something that happened 2,000 miles away, none of the people here were involved. I think a good organized, go and tell the city we want to have this protest. You know, let the city offer its support and keep everyone safe. I think that's outstanding.
It really went well. And we weren't sure what to expect. You know, we had every law enforcement agency in this county gathered up and putting together a plan. And it was a fine balancing act. And the city did a great job in putting together a plan that kept us close, but not so close that people felt threatened by our presence. And so it was well done. You know, kudos to Chief Kirby at the time, but you know, Chief Day, he was right there, and as well as you know, Mayor Wynn. They did a good job of conveying and putting together a safe protest, and where everyone felt like they could be heard.
I think it worked out.
Yep.
It did. Well, let's move off of Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
We definitely didn't bring you in here just to chat about that, especially now that it's seems to be dying down. It seems like most of the left-wing movements are dying down now.
They won. They got the president. What else is there to do now?
I kind of think they lost. There's strength in being the minority. I mean, look at what the Republicans got this year. They got concealed carry concessions out of the justices, and they got an end to Roe versus Wade. There's strength in being the minority. So, I don't know. You fight a little harder, maybe.
And you're a Republican, correct, Paul?
I am. I'm.
So you're running on the Republican ticket.
I am the Republican nominee.
Is there a Democrat running against you?
There is not.
There's not.
We're having a hard time finding Democrats in the county.
You know,
is it just because we're smarter and higher educated here beyond the mountain? Would that be the?
Or maybe they avoid us? I don't know.
I don't know. You know, and you know, my first run for sheriff, there was a Democrat opponent, and class act. You know, to this day, I think he was one of the. You know, as far as you're looking for qualifications and so forth, he was one of the ones that was most qualified, much like myself, in a similar situation. He ran a good campaign, and it was a clean campaign. And, you know, to this day, I appreciate the manner in which he handled himself during the campaign, and have a good exchange with him every time I see him.
Now, we had a tradition out here for most of my life. Most of our county sheriffs, if I remember, were Democrats.
Yeah.
That seemed to be
the Tooele County was traditionally for a long time Democrat, and Sheriff Proctor, who passed away earlier this year, it was in May time period. He was the last Republican to hold office, and that was late '80s time frame, and then we had a solid run of a couple sheriffs with Sheriff Sharman and Sheriff Park that were both Democrat, and then and actually Sheriff Park was the last Democrat in a county office to be holding office, and then when he retired, that ended.
Seems like the Democrat Party's different than they were then, though. Just an outside. I'm not a Republican, but an outside observation seemed different.
I think that just the times have created a situation where often the extreme voice within any party seems to get the mic and get an awful lot of time.
Clickbait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
there's that, and there's also, I've been wanting to bring this up on the show, and I don't want to occupy your time when you're going to talk about your future plans. But I wonder if as a state, our primary system, and most states carry a similar primary system to ours, don't cause that, because in the primaries, the extreme of the party chooses the candidate from the party. And then in the general, the independents choose who's going to be the office winner. And so all we're offering to the independents are who runs to the party extreme. And that's on both sides.
I do agree that it is equal on both sides, and it can, I don't know that extremism from both sides is really very healthy.
Oh, not at all.
Because I think it leaves a lot of voters almost without a candidate, even within their own party at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It gets scary too.
Yeah.
It gets scary when the person with the most radical voice is the one that's being delivered to everyone.
Speaking of extremist views and whatnot, what are the qualifications to be county sheriff if someone wanted to run for county sheriff?
Well, you have to have a law enforcement certification, and then if in addition to the law enforcement, for example, I came from the law enforcement side of the house, and I didn't have corrections side of the house under my belt when I ran, and so before you can actually take office, you have to take a corrections liability class. It's essentially a 40-hour class through post in order to actually qualify. But the law enforcement certification allows you to file. If you don't have it, you can't file, and then you do have to have that other certification under your belt before you can take office.
What is a law enforcement certification?
So you're certified to be a cop, and
So you've gone through post.
yeah. So you've gone through post, and so there's what we call LEO, which is law enforcement officer, and then there's BCO, which is basic corrections officer. And the foundation of both of them is SFO, which is special functions officer. So everyone goes through special functions, and then depending on what career path you take, you end up, if you're heading into the corrections arena, going to the prison or the jail, you're going to jump into the BCO academy. If you're looking to go to the road, you're going to go into the law enforcement officer academy.
Okay, gotcha.
And some people get dual certified. Some academies run them all. And
Don't a lot of deputies end up being dual certified? Because quickest way into the office into the sheriff's office as a deputy is to generally start out at the corrections.
And in the past, that was very much so the case. Often the pathway to become a road deputy was through the jail. The staffing challenges that law enforcement has experienced in the last few years has made that not necessarily the only way onto the road. Simply because we've found times when we're down as many road deputies as we are corrections deputies. And so, and if you don't have enough correction deputies seeking the road job, then you end up just hiring directly for the road and putting them through the law enforcement academy.
Is it a pretty quick process to get through the law enforcement academy, or is that a
No,
Isn't it like a 6-month school?
Wow.
it's roughly 19 weeks.
Or 19. It is,
yeah.
but it's a full school. Like
Right.
they go in there 5 days a week, and
Yeah, we don't see them.
it's dang near basic training type. I mean, you'll see guys come out of there and they're fit. They work them in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll send them off to the academy. We'll welcome with open arms, and then we don't see them until they get back.
Do you have a door on the other side of the office when you hire them? They just walk right through and get on the bus, or
It's not quite that quick, but and then we send them in, and then they come back certified, and we swear them in and put them on the road, and we'll put them in our FTO program, which is another 12 weeks, assuming that they hit the benchmarks that are required under our field training program, and then with a little bit of luck, after that additional 12 weeks, they're out doing God's work.
good.
And they stay with us.
Yeah, and that's been one of the challenges. But you take, a couple years ago, we started experiencing the wage wars, where your bigger cities, Salt Lake City, West Valley City, West Jordan, really just started bumping up pay to the point to where smaller municipalities and counties simply could not keep pace. We just didn't have the tax base to keep pace with a Salt Lake City, and so you lose some to pay periodically, and that's in addition to your natural attrition. You got guys hit the retirement age, and you want them to do what they dreamed of. Some of them, their goal was to hit 20 and go do something else, or go get another job, and then they can pull their pension and make money. And so they're tens of $1,000s ahead in annual salary at that point. And so, I got a couple lieutenants that have retired over the last couple of years. They went out to Dugway, matched the pay they were making as lieutenants for the sheriff's office, and were pulling their pension. So,
And getting a pretty sweet medical and dental.
Yep.
And it's not like Dugway is full of hot action chase after or something. So
Every once in a while, there's that errant antelope on the golf
Right.
course that needs to be chased off. But no, that is a tough thing, and it's not just in law enforcement that pay change has been felt. So bringing that back to Tooele, we need more commercial out here so we can support a more broad tax base.
agreed. And and I think our county and our cities, they're looking bigger picture now, at least from what I've seen, to where they're not siloing. They realize that commercial coming out, regardless of what community it hits, is going to be a good thing all around. And so their economic development programs are a little more, coordinated with one another. And they've stopped we're going to try to get them. No, you're trying. There was kind of a competitiveness to try to get them to come to your city, and I think they found that they were almost undermining one another versus accomplishing the greater good of just getting some good, solid commercial out here, hanging into the coffers, even if it wasn't necessarily your own coffers. It was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of real estate between here in Grantsville and splitting there into the Erda split that's begging to be developed into commercial.
Indeed.
Yeah. So what are your future plans? Your future
ambitions.
You win sheriff, what's the goal?
The sheriff's job is never done, for one. And we've had a very active couple terms, as is. We took a jail and turned it around. Just to understand, when I took office, I came into a jail that didn't have a policy in place, and so we were, and as a result of that, we would undergo an audit, and we were failing miserably. And when I say miserably, of the 600 things they checked us on, we were failing on nearly 200 of them. And a lot of that had to do with not having policy in place. So we were able to correct that, right the ship. We ace our audits now, and in part that has allowed us to bring in the state inmates that we now bring in. And so just to give you a comparison, when I took office, our contract bed revenues hovered around $500,000. We've increased that significantly. We've made over $2 million. When I say make, we've offset the expense of the jail by that amount.
Yeah,
because it's never
you've
going
saved.
to be. Yes, it's never going to be a money maker.
Yeah, law enforcement generally isn't.
No, we're a hard cost.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at us, but it did offset, and it was what they originally had envisioned for building the jail, the size they did, and so we were, we got all that in line, and we're holding the line there, and we have to maintain these standards to do so. We had a cultural change within the organization itself to where we were more conscientious of the constitutional protections, the state law, and in our own policy. Because what we found is policies are only good if they're held accountable to them. Mm-hmm. And so we came in and we started holding them accountable, and that all these things are ongoing. They'll never end, and they should go well past me as sheriff. My successor should maintain that standard of conduct that has generated an agency of rewarding the high performers, and and sometimes low performers need to be pushed on, because we're not getting our tax dollars out of them. But by and large, we've flipped that around to where those that are able to maintain the standards set forth, they're good staff. They're great staff. But moving into the future, we're a little bit technologically behind. As when I say that, we have not accomplished what we wanted to on social media. We have a presence, but it's not a significant presence. We really should be pushing a little more information out to the citizens.
So what you're saying is you need to hire a 22-year-old female just
with a phone,
fresh out of college, and
pay for her phone. Maybe she'll do it.
Yeah. We need to be better about that. We're working on that and have been. And we have increased it some, but it's not to where we had envisioned it. And so we still have plenty of work to do there. Another area where we can be more efficient and effective is we need to look into the ability to do a police report online.
Yes.
And because there's
like
just
an open blotter for the public to view, or is that what you're talking about?
Not necessarily. Just, if you came out and you found someone had rummaged through your car, there may not be a whole lot of evidence to.
Oh, you mean file
a police report?
The report
Yes.
from the victim. Okay, I like that. Instead of the sheriff, the deputy,
Respond.
or the police officer has to come out to you, talk to you for 5 minutes, and then hand you a piece of paper, say, drop this by the station when you can.
Right.
Which is honestly the time that they have anymore.
Yeah. Well, and so what that would allow is you to file it online, get a case number. So if there's an insurance component to it, you have reported it to the police. Maybe someone while your garage was hanging open rolled your lawnmower away, and you don't have a lawnmower anymore, and you want to claim that on your homeowner's insurance. You'll need a case number, but yet there may not be a whole lot of evidence, but you need to report it so we can sit there and watch for it at the, with the latest pawn shop sheet and see if we can't recover it. But there's just some circumstances where there are just some calls where you don't necessarily need a uniform to show up to your house. And
even like most minor fender benders, the police officer might be able to say who's at fault, but in a parking lot, two people both backing into each other. And that's where they could both fill it out online, turn it into their insurance, and they're both on their way. Would that be considered a reported car accident then, though?
Well, if it reaches the threshold of the reportable accident, which it changes periodically, I think right now it's $2,500 of damage. But
Okay, so on a new Ford F-150,
yeah,
scratch the aluminum bumper.
yeah.
Seriously.
Well, and that's what's interesting is you know, a front bumper cover and the structure underneath it is $1,200 right off the bat. So if you have two of them run into each other, you're dang near there.
They bought two houses, and then a guy runs over a 1986 Yugo, and he's marked the tally where he's got to knock out 7 more to even get on your radar.
Yeah. Yeah. And so them are some things we're looking into, you know, and, but we've also been conservative with the budget. We're just preparing our budgets to get them turned in right now. And, you know, with the threat of recession, or with us being into recession.
I heard what the president said. We have redefined it. Wikipedia told me so. We're not in any danger of recession. This is what they call it, a minor,
hiccup.
Inconvenient
Hiccup.
downturn.
And so I don't know if this year is the year I fund that, or I ask for that. You know, to me, it's more important that we're able to keep the staff we have. You know, I would much rather that go into enriching their pay or the benefit package. You know, if there's a pick and a choose. But if I find myself with a little bit of grant funding, that would be what we'd be looking to do with it.
I'm wondering if you could look around and find a department that has that and let you just buy a license off them.
Yeah. Tooele City's been experimenting with one, and it looks like it's working pretty well. And so just for the sake of continuity, we'd probably look for the same, you know, down the same path and vendors, what they're using.
That'd be awesome to make it uniform throughout the county too.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that we've done at the sheriff's office is we used to all be so siloed with our reports. And when I took office, we had a report management system for our road. We had a CAD system with our dispatch, and a jail management system, and all three of them were different vendors. And they kind of talk. Well, the CAD for dispatch to the road talked well with each other, but nothing talked to our jail management system. And so,
well, it's probably because dispatch and the road talk to each other all night, every night.
That is true. But now we're on one system that offered all three disciplines. And as a result of that, Tooele City came on. Grantsville has since come on. Stockton is on it. And the data sharing is unlike it's ever been before with these agencies. And so, you know, crime doesn't know jurisdiction. And so if we've had interaction with a regular and he ends up in Tooele City, they can see what interactions we've had with that individual. And vice versa, and same with Grantsville. It's been a good thing for us.
I didn't even know there was a problem with that. I figured police officers just know everything as soon as they see my license plate.
Oh, there's David.
Yep. But in terms of data relay and transportation, and being transparent with the public with this data, how do you provide information to the public on just things that happen in Tooele?
And that's the component of social media that we need to be better with. You know, when we have a traffic accident, Way 36, how nice would it be to push out social media posts saying, "Hey, avoid this area." And you know, there's through the EOC we have a mass notification system that will push it out to those that subscribe to it, but it's limited to those that have subscribed to it. And I'm telling you what, I'm told if you're over 40, you're going to get it from Facebook. If you're under 40, you're going to get it from Instagram. So
and that's what I'm thinking about. Do you have to have officers? They pull up, they take an extra minute to type into Facebook, avoid this intersection, and then they get out. And you don't want them to kill that time, but maybe someone in dispatch that works for the whole county. Another thing, something to think about, is also add it to the different mapping services like Apple Maps or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Because they give you warnings and alerts.
Right. When there's a
Yeah.
accident. And so them are all things we need to improve on. No question.
And I think that's just figuring out how.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, and what is it going to cost as far, and how much time is it going to take from an employee? How much staff do you have to commit to it? And I do agree that.
Would it be cheaper just to hire someone? Hire someone that sits on the north end of the dispatch building in one of them poofy chairs, drinks her latte, and just has a laptop and a cell phone and a tablet.
You know the price of lattes these days, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't get away from
Maybe
those
that's her
stores without
paycheck.
paying $6.
Yeah.
But and accidents are one thing. I'm more or less thinking like like situational reports on gang violence, drugs and break-ins and things like along that nature.
Do we have a lot of that here in the county?
We have a bit of everything. We're if it happens in the big city, it happens here. It's relative to the population. We'll handle a homicide or two a year. We'll have some gang issues here and there. And the gang things kind of are cyclic. You'll have them start to rise, and then you'll have them kind of dwindle for a little bit, and then they'll rise up. It's an interesting thing. When I worked the road years ago, the gang thing was much more of a problem than what we're experiencing right now.
Well, it's because gang are teenage boys, and now they've got Xbox.
That's probably true. They're probably all on it.
I think that we've seen a drop in all except for the really hardest inner cities. We've seen a drop in gang activity across the nation.
Yeah, and because it's different than what I experienced when I worked the road many years ago, and so yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon watching the gang and the gang activity.
Maybe there'll be gangs in the metaverse that Zuckerberg will have to figure out how to police.
Yeah,
shaking people down.
What about the Tooele County meetings? I always see you there. You're always there. You're the police presence in those meetings. Has anything ever happened in those meetings?
Periodically. I think we have only ever had to remove one guy, and I forget the issue at the time. I'm confident it was planning and zoning. It's going to say if it's not planning and zoning, it's got to be masks. And while I'm a big fan of public input, and so was the council, but we just had one guy that he would not let the meeting progress without him hollering out and interrupting the meeting. There is a public comment period, and that's what that's designed for, to get your message out, get your word out. But then the meeting's got to move through the agenda, and if he's going to prevent it from progressing, then technically he's breaking the law. And so we didn't charge him. We just asked him to leave.
So without violence being involved, that'd probably be your general thing, is you escort him out of the building. And
yeah, and like I said, that I can only recall one. I did have another time where I had to get up, and here's another thing that I've asked them to do, and they haven't yet. Eventually they hopefully will, because a lot of people go into these and they don't understand how the meeting works. They're upset about a planning and zoning issue or a mask mandate issue, and they show up to the meeting and they want to be heard. They don't exactly know how the council meeting works and when they're supposed to ask, get their turn. And so since they don't get it, they start hollering out. And so there was one where we were getting a lot of people, kind of just different people hollering out. And so I kind of had to stand up and say, hey, folks, look, this isn't how the meeting works. Public comment is when you get to talk. The rest is really listen to these guys go through the agenda and know what they're thinking and listening to their discussions. But public comment is your opportunity to address the council members. And honestly, it wasn't a problem thereafter because they understood the rules, where I think the rules ought to be posted somewhere in the room or on the back of the agenda, just so people, because unless you go to them, you really don't know how they're structured.
That is true. Most of it is dry as a popcorn fart. All right, this is the budget for fixing the lawnmower this month. And all in favor. It's just moving through those different little monotone budgets that are moving on. And I can understand how that'd be awful to have to sit there when you're trying to just, they all just want to get through that.
Yeah.
No one wants to argue about the fixing of the old F-150 that drives the gas to wherever.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that the public doesn't understand is public comment is really public comment. It's not always set up for a public conversation between the council and the commenter. And so that frustrates them further. And so I think that, again, if the rules of the game were better explained, there would be fewer issues. But that's also, we don't have that many issues, but the issues we have had typically would have been solved by a good outline on how it works. And, but the public also needs to recognize that the time to have that conversation with the council is offline, on the side, or send them some emails, and get that dialogue going then, because then it can be a back and forth as to why we're doing what we're doing and what the public doesn't like about it.
Yeah, nobody likes to be chastised in public, especially, like you're an elected official and you're angry with the elected official. There's a time and a place, but I mean, a lot of times in Tooele, I just see people go up to the mic and rip right into them just because they're frustrated, which, I get that, but if you want to be an effective communicator, you have to be able to communicate with people on the same level and get that dialogue moving back and forth. And public comment is not a back and forth methodology to communicate with your overlords.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even then, it just seems like, what are you going to do to get them to turn around a ship that's probably already got community investment in it and everything else there on the spot? How do you slow that down?
But there is that one situation. We had a guy on our podcast who wore a shirt that had, it was so memorable.
It just said vote. It said vote yes or something.
It said
he was
something.
That one, but that
like,
was at the state.
There was a flag on it or something.
That was at the state. Oh, he had a flag sticker on his pant leg. It had to do with the vote to restrict the ability, I think,
to allow transgender.
No, it's about
kids.
mask mandates.
Okay.
It was about that. And, it was.
They pretty much detained him on the ground, held him down, made him squeal over a shirt because the chair told him to. And I guess maybe the best way to lead into this question is, as the sheriff, can you tell the elected officials, no, that's crazy, I'm not going to do that?
Oh yeah. Well, that's the whole point of being an independently elected sheriff is you can tell them, no, that's crazy.
Where the police chief has to obey the mayor.
Yeah.
And stuff. You are answerable to the voting electorate.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of the office of sheriff, being, the elected law enforcement official of the county. The beauty of that is I answer to you, I answer to the citizens, and what you say is pretty much going to determine what I do as much as anybody else. And the council, while we have a good working relationship with them, and but it's not unheard of to where I've had to tell them, yeah, this sheriff's not doing that.
Well, let's lead into that. You brought up masks, and I have heard through the grapevine that the council requested for you to do some mask enforcement through the county, and you told them that's.
They didn't specifically ask me to do mask enforcement. More so because right up from the front, I said, mask is not a police issue. That is not something that, we got a handful of phone calls when the mask mandates first came out because a lot of the parks shut down their playgrounds because they didn't want the kids playing on the playgrounds. And we'd have citizens call and report that these kids were on the playground. And I told my guys, we're not going to that.
Remember when California filled that skate park in with sand?
Oh man.
Yeah.
How much do you think they paid to unfill that later? It's just
some things make no sense whatsoever. And so there was this, there was an expectation to some degree from other leadership that we would do something about the masks, and I just told them from the get that's not something we are going to do. And then probably where we got a little bit where I had to say no was there was that concert that was coming out to the
Brazen Head.
Yeah, Brazen Head, and they very much wanted me to shut that down. And that was just not something that I was going to do. I was not going to take guns and men out there and shut down
Oh, geez,
a concert.
Bad.
Oh, and it was, and really in the end, okay, they were violating the public health order. And here was my challenge with the public health order in general. By the time any one of them tickets or them charges made it to the court, that order would have been gone. It was just one of them things where I thought this is a requested compliance, and that's what it needs to be left at. And people know the risks, and we need to trust people to make their own decision on their health and go with it. But there was a push for me to shut that down, and it's really a permitting issue because he didn't have the mass gathering permits, and so finally, in one of our conversations, they asked me, said, "Well, what do you think we should do, Sheriff?" I said, "Well, follow the ordinance, because under the ordinance, under the permitting, if someone holds an event without getting a permit, you go and petition the court to issue an injunction to shut it down." And so that's what they did. And the Brazen Head, once the judge said, "Yeah, you can't have this event," they didn't have it. And so I thought that's a heck of a lot better.
One firearm was brought.
Yeah. And Brazen Head, they were provided due process under the county ordinance. And that's really where it came. And so to where I said that we have to give him due process. I've never made an arrest or written a ticket for a permitting issue, a mass gathering permit in my career. And I was not about to make that be my first one. And so the whole COVID thing was some challenging times, but I think my guys and the precedent we set allowed it to go as peaceful as possible.
I'll tell you, Tooele ran as smooth as anywhere that I visited during that time. It was
you barely noticed it. I
unless
noticed it in the courthouse. I walk in and there's the security guards there, and they're like, "We have to enforce the mask thing," and
but that
was about it.
Still, it was reasonable in Walmart. I think, in my opinion, Home Depot handled it the best, because not only did you have to wear a mask, but they just had a box of masks sitting by the door. So if you forgot one, you just put one on, walk through. Was that, I mean, aside from, how do I put this? Our Green New Deal and all the pollution we dumped into the earth in the last 2 years with those paper masks, it was rather efficient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't imagine what it's going to look like once the floating island of masks gets on the radar, and, you know, and then we've got to scream about it on the news every night.
Yeah. Well, and there was a balancing act. You know, speaking of a Walmart, you know, being privately owned, they have the right to require a mask.
100%.
And so we would have some hardcore, I'm not wearing a mask, pretty much insisting that they could be in Walmart. No, actually, they can deny you.
But in that
access.
circumstance, you're enforcing trespass.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with the mask on your end.
Right.
It has to do with Walmart says they have to leave. They're refusing to leave.
Correct. And to go back to your the masks being available, I myself have showed up to a number of, you know, over the last, you know, year when masks have dwindled off, I've shown up to doctor's appointments without a mask. And, and a lot of doctor's offices still require it. And so I'd have to, I'm not against, you know, putting one on, but I don't have one. And so they would have to provide me one. And
I'm all about doing whatever the business owner says.
Yep. No,
because it's private property. I respect that 100%.
Agreed. And so we're walking that line, you know, where we had to, you know, be respectful of private entities' wishes, and if, you know, you may not be able to get your jug of milk from Walmart,
or you may have to drive home to get it.
Yep.
Or you may have to, you know, go find a mask somewhere and come back. You know, drive to Home Depot, go in, get a mask, go shop down the whatever aisle, pick out your paint swatches, and then go back to Walmart.
Hopefully you don't need a mask to go in and buy a mask, because then you're really
in Home Depot. They had them laid right by the door.
Yeah,
and I thought that was the best. You know,
I think Lucky's did that too. There was a lot of stores.
It was a small expenditure, but I think for me, that went so far with goodwill for me that if I forgot a mask or you know, after you've worn a mask a handful of times, it starts smelling like the south end of a northbound dog, you know? And so eventually you're just like, this thing's nasty. And to have, when I had to go in there to have a fresh one available, I thought that was very nice.
They become more of a health hazard after a while. I mean, they're just meant to be disposable.
I can only imagine. Here, pour me a.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about this. So when I was in Italy, I found this drink called limoncello. It's everywhere in Italy. They make it all over. I found 2 bottles here in the Tooele liquor store, and I bought them both.
Yeah.
So, Jared, this will be your first time trying limoncello.
All right.
I'm a big fan now after going to Italy.
Limoncello. But anyway, so
none for you, Paul. None for you.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Paul's drinking the hard stuff tonight.
Yeah.
Mineral water.
The stuff you fight over.
So what about the Sheriff's Association? I know you're heavily involved with that, and you probably have something to say about it.
Well, the Sheriff Association, when you're a new sheriff, you come to rely heavily on that organization, because there are just some things you encounter once you're elected that, quite frankly, you're clueless. Mm-hmm. And, you know, anyone who pretends to know everything there is to know about sheriffing is up in the night. And what I found was what a huge resource as far as just a congregation of sheriffs that have experienced so many different things, that there was nothing that I brought up that they didn't have some answer and that would help me come up with a solution. And so it was the Sheriff's Association that really put me on the path to passing my jail audit and understanding some of the things that I needed to do, some of the protocols we needed to get into place in order to have a jail that is functioning the way it's supposed to be functioning. For
So
both.
they kind of give you guidelines for
Yep.
an SOP, kind of.
Yep. And if you need a policy on anything, or if you need a form on any process you're doing, there's the sheriff's office out there with it. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so that was a good thing to get involved with them. And then I had the I don't know if the fortune or misfortune to get elected as their president for 2019.
Mm.
And an awful lot of what they do also is we spend a lot of time up on Capitol Hill, talking to legislators, trying to ensure that they're not passing legislation that is compromising our ability to keep the public safe. Because most of your legislators are pretty well intended, but sometimes they don't even understand some of the unintended consequences of the bills they're passing.
Hold on. You just said something extremely shocking. Tell me more. No. The government is the captain of unintended consequences.
Yeah. And so I spent the majority of the session in 2019 up there, and it was also an opportunity for us to fight for a little improvement on retirement for our law enforcement professionals throughout the state, and for the first time since 2011, when they gutted the retirement system, we made some progress. Almost every other year it got shot down, and a lot of that can be attributed to the Chiefs Association did some heavy lifting, and we were right there with them, and we got a little rich. I mean, it's not what it was prior to 2011, but it's better than what it was in 2018.
How well does, say, the sheriff's department out here work with Salt Lake? I would say, Box Elder, but let's face it, there isn't any human beings alive between where we sit now and Idaho on through Box Elder. There's one small town there, but it really doesn't count.
Yeah.
But Salt Lake, how do the sheriffs? I mean, I imagine there's a bit of political difference there, but how well do they work together? How?
Really well together.
Good.
Rosie Rivera, she when she got elected, when she got appointed, when Sheriff Winder vacated to go be the chief of Moab City, she was who the Democrats selected to put forward as the to finish out his term, and then she had to run. She was welcomed into the association with open arms, and she's just been a great partner. And when we were trying to increase our, she had a problem and I had a problem. I had a problem, not enough revenue, not enough of my beds were full. And she had a problem where she didn't have enough beds for the people coming into her facility. And so she and I worked together and put together an agreement where we would take some of their inmates, and that laid the groundwork for the state prison inmates that we take in now. And that was a good test for us, and we did them a good job, and they paid us a fair amount to do it. And,
Overflow beds.
Yep. And our relationship with the sheriff's office in Salt Lake County's been top notch, and there's nothing I'd want to change about that. When one of the challenges with getting people trained up is the timing of when they run academies. Well, Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office is big enough to where they run their own academy. Well, I had a situation where I had a young man that I had hired, but it was months before I could get him into an academy. But she was running an academy, so I called her and said, "Hey, can I slip him into your academy?" And they took him in, just as part of their cohort of cadets, and they got him trained up and certified, and it was a very minimal cost to us.
I'll bet that's a great experience, because now you've got a guy that has friends on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah, our biggest fear was losing him to him, but no, he he came back to us. He's done us a good job.
But it would have taken him months to get a date had she not been able to take him in.
Correct.
That's good. I've heard nothing but good things about her.
Yeah, and her she's been the spearhead of lowering the age to 19 for corrections, and I honestly would like to see the age lowered to 19 for both corrections and law enforcement officers.
What do you think about the drinking age?
Well,
if you're
I want to ask on that, not just the drinking age, but what about the handgun age? That's where it gets complicated.
You know, now you're getting into a personal philosophy kind of a conversation.
Hey, let's dig into.
You were saying you're willing to take them in at 19 to patrol the streets and serve the public, which is a risky hazard because you can die doing that. So, also as a police officer, your duty is to bring the hammer down if someone tries to enjoy the freedoms of the republic at that age as well.
Well, why I'm supportive of lowering the age is simply because maturity is in the individual. It doesn't have nearly as much to do with age as it does the individual. There's 25-year-olds that don't have the maturity to do this job.
Hell, I'm 47.
I know I couldn't do the job.
But there are 18, 19-year-olds that could. And another thing it creates is if we could get them fresh out of high school before they go make money and start climbing the corporate ladder
Before they taste it.
out of Cabela's or the Walmart distribution center, maybe we would have a little easier time getting them into the fold.
But how do you argue that? You essentially have to become just half of one, Dave. You have to become old, what's his name, Nadler? In the question of we're going to restrict their ability to purchase and own a handgun specifically, and then also compel it through not compel. How do you, because let's face it, law enforcement is supposed to be civilians given a modicum of authority.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to carry all the same laws and restrictions as everyone else. And when that was brought up with the military, when Thomas Massey says, okay, well, let's change the draft day. And Nadler essentially said, we need young men to die. How do you justify those two? Or would you try to lead a fight that at least in Utah or Tooele County, we keep age of consent law as far as owning firearms, and then hopefully extend that to alcohol use and all that other stuff?
Well,
careful what you say. You're live.
Yeah. Well, no, you put a lot into that statement and question. But from a standpoint of legality, say putting a 19-year out on the road with a Glock 17 and nearly 50 rounds of ammo to go do his business. I think the workaround we have workarounds anyway. We possess drugs in the course of our duty. Whether we're a canine training a dog or we're seizing drugs out of someone's car or home, and for that time period, we have them drugs, and so I'm okay with
separate. It's separate to say we possess drugs when it's a confiscated item in transport under a chain of custody, versus where it's illegal for a person the exact same age, but due to age, to possess that piece of equipment. Whereas if you were saying we possess drugs because, after we get off, we can utilize them.
It's quite the catch-22.
Or we can sell them.
But, and there again,
because I agree with you. Yeah. I agree with you, but I think if your laws aren't moral, what are they?
Yeah. And I don't really, all right, personal my
just let it out, brother.
Yeah. The age of adult needs to be the age of adult, and there needs to be, in my opinion, one.
Yeah.
The way I see it, if we can put a kid with an M4 in a
Mhm.
faraway land and have him go to war, I don't view it as a lot different as having a kid wearing a uniform and handing him a Glock 17 and having him go out and
Mhm.
do what he's been trained to do. And again, it comes down to the maturity level. We don't have to hire anybody, unless we feel they're ready to do the job or can do the job. And we get to watch them through 19, we keep in touch with the post and their sergeant, a post as to how they're doing. And then we get 12 weeks of them with an experienced officer to see how they're behaving under stress and all the other different situations. And they're on probation for that first year. And if for whatever reason we don't think they're going to be able to accomplish the job in the manner we need it done, we cut them loose.
Mhm.
And so I think we get sufficient time to see how they're going to behave.
How often do you do that, Paul? How often do you have to say to somebody, you're not going to cut it after all that training and whatnot?
I would think post would wash out anyone who's really subpar.
If they're really subpar.
Yeah, like someone's truly shocking, I would think post would wash them out. I mean, post isn't like going to, Navy SEAL school, but it's substantial.
Well, and understand it's still training though. And so they're in the business of getting recruits in, getting them trained up and getting them out. And so there's not a lot of incentive. Obviously if there's a chronic problem with an individual, they would give us a call and let us know. Periodically we have someone that simply cannot pass all the benchmarks set in post. And so at that point, they're no longer qualified to do the job they were hired to do. And so we have to cut them loose. And then, our FTO program is not, it's designed to get them trained up in the real world, but at the same time, it is not designed to put a bad deputy on the road. And, I tell all my FTOs, whether your recruit is doing well as if you want him on your crew when he's done. Because if you don't want him on your crew, then we've got to talk. There's a problem. Because, that's just the litmus test for whether they're accomplishing and adjusting to the training.
Sounds pretty reasonable.
If you don't want him on your crew, whose crew are you going to send him on? And so we want every one of them to be wanted on the crew. And that doesn't always happen. I don't know that I have a percentage of how many wash out of our FTO program, but it's not rare, but it's not frequent. It's periodically.
Well, I'm sure most people that want to become law enforcement officers recognize that their job is, one, to keep the FTO happy and keep the sheriff happy. So they strive to do that, and they, stand back and pay attention, then copy and pay attention and copy. And then when you're out on the road by yourself, continue to copy.
Yeah.
Do what the guy who knew what they were doing taught you.
Yeah. And our FTOs are the FTOs for a reason, because they do things correctly and how we want them done. And so if they'll emulate their FTO, any one of them, because all of them are some of them have strengths in different areas, but all of them are very well-rounded deputies, and that's why they train.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So again, back to the argument of the extremes in government. Right now we have a government that both at the same time wants to delay adulthood and then extend adulthood options into that ages. And it's both parties. But right now, the Democrats want to delay adulthood. They want you to not enter adulthood as early. They want you to stay in school. They want you to, instead of going out and pursuing a prosperous life, but then they want to extend the vote down to 16-year-olds. Sounds like a brilliant idea to me because, you know,
I hope you'll arrest any 16-year-old trying to vote.
no, I want them to turn off Katy Perry or whatever hot pop singer of the day is to cast their ballot, because I think
it's a good idea?
it's the best idea ever.
I think you're crazy.
I think it, you know,
You drank too much limoncello.
it'd be like Caligula's in charge again. It'd be fantastic. But you know, and that's the dichotomy that you witness when you watch C-SPAN.
Like, how would you even petition a 16-year-old for their vote as a county sheriff? I mean,
As a county sheriff,
it would almost be a circus act.
I don't know if county sheriffs that'd be in their focus group.
Yeah, you'd have to go on Instagram.
Yeah, you
Or
go on Instagram.
TikTok.
You'd have to be making
Yeah.
TikTok
We would
videos.
see
Yeah,
Sheriff Wimmer. Sheriff
Yeah.
Wimmer leaned up against a patrol car with his back arched. That'd be
Yeah, and I think it would be a tough group to appeal to, and but at the same time, I guess they have elections in their schools, so that voting for someone for something is not unheard of. So
that's true.
Train them early.
The hazard is you notice in the schools, the class president has the responsibility to maybe carry paper from classroom A to classroom B and plan the prom, and to hand 16-year-olds a national budget demand sounds scary. You know?
yeah,
Okay. But now that I said that, our president is keen. Anyways, mind if we run through some comments?
Oh wow! Look at all the comments we got.
we got a
How'd that
few.
happen?
All right. So James, I don't know if you're still on there, James. You said to pull you in. I don't know if you're still on there, but ask him constitutional questions. So
I think we did a pretty good job of that. I think
We
we
did.
grilled you pretty hard, Paul. What do you think?
okay.
and it looks like Holly is going to drag you
Stop.
further into that.
She's not a big fan of the 16-year-olds voting.
Good.
Holly,
Yeah,
Caligula, most interesting leader ever.
Oh, what an artist you have lost in me.
Just right. I mean, he is just before, I don't know, Nero. And then you can, I don't know, follow that up with other interesting dudes. All right. So constitutional questions, we'll dig into them as we go along, but let's start. I mean, I paid attention to what you've had going on, and I've seen our sheriff's office has been a very responsive sheriff's office. I know that prior to you becoming sheriff, there was a couple of incidents, and I think in one year there were 3 of them, and 2 of them involved sheriffs, where a deputy entered a yard and a dog was shot. And in one of those incidents, I believe it was the wrong yard. It was a fenced in yard, and he had no duty business being in that yard. And I know that caused an uproar, but I haven't seen any of that. And, that could be, maybe you came in and put the crack down, or just drawing attention to that. Then other officers start paying attention, start making that a thought on their mind, like, wait a second, I've got to plan for this and plan around this, so either way. First Amendment, we live in a red county in a red state. When blue is in charge, First Amendment doesn't apply. The reds are the ones fighting for the First Amendment. Now, Second Amendment, that's a big one. And this Holly's question comes into that. She apologized for being late to the party. Yes, Holly, you should. Recently, the ATF was recording asking a man to show them his guns on his front step to prove that he had them. Oh, it jumped. Got another. To prove that he had them. What should a citizen do? Demand a warrant and risk a bigger problem, or simply comply? Can we request a deputy to assist a citizen in this situation?
Yes. First of all, answer to the first question is absolutely require the warrant. That's, yeah. If they knocked on my door, I would tell them to go get a warrant.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
you know.
I know I've got a law enforcement officer in my house without a warrant today, but special circumstance. Next time he is a guest on the show, we'll go through the process and get a warrant affidavit. He wants me there. The judge has this, whatever. I'm going to wear blindfolders as I walk through his house with the dead animals on the wall.
No, I was checking them out.
They look
I like the
tasty.
dead animals. Yeah.
But no, I agree. Now, should let's say that happened to Holly. Should she call you or call the dispatch and request a deputy show up?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe not to stop them, but just for
no other reason. Let's confirm they are who they are. They have any reason to be in the area for whatever reason, because technically, the feds should be deconflicting with the sheriff's office. They should be checking in with us and saying, "Hey, this is what we got going, and this is why we're doing it," and running the case through us before they show up to someone's house, even when they get their search warrant. That really should be, we should be on site with an understanding of what the purpose of that search warrant
not
is.
to mention having you guys there only makes it safer. We found that out at Waco.
Right. Yeah.
Waco, the ATF and the FBI neglected the sheriff, and I know for a fact the sheriff, first of all, had a relationship with old David.
Mm-hmm.
And had they got the sheriff involved to an appropriate level, they'd have brought David in, and Waco would have been probably unmolested.
Have you seen the video that Holly is referencing?
I haven't.
Okay.
I have. Okay, the ATF shows up on the door. They're friendly, but they're coaxing him to bring his firearms out so they can visually do an inspection and make sure he has them and he's not a straw purchaser, because it looks like on the paperwork he purchased 2 AR-15s in one day. They didn't verify whether those were the same type of AR, because, you might buy an AR with a 23-inch barrel because you want to shoot far, and one with a, the pistol model, because you want something cool, and whatever that is. I have a question. Concealed carry permits in the state of Utah. This doesn't just involve the county. This is state. Are those records kept with the sheriff, or are they kept in a central state location?
We do not keep concealed carry permits. The state would be the one, because they're the ones that issue the card.
Yeah, it goes by state.
Mm-hmm.
In Missouri, the county is kept at the sheriff level.
Yeah, we don't get them.
Okay, so and either way,
Yeah.
But that was one of the arguments. I don't know if you saw it. Was Senator Hawley had that argument with the ATF 3 weeks ago, because the ATF was asking a sheriff to release his county's concealed carry permit holders to them. But Missouri has a specific law that state and city and county officers cannot comply with federal government when it comes to Second Amendment enforcement, regardless of however you look at that law, whether you feel it's constitutional or not. That's their state law.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ATF tried crossing that boundary.
Yeah.
In this situation, though, the ATF agent, the individual called the police on the ATF agent, and the police came over, and he was a little lippy, I guess.
You're thinking of a different one than the one I'm thinking of.
I'm pretty sure this is what Holly's referencing.
The one I'm thinking of, there were 4 ATF or 4 law enforcement officers, 2 on the porch, 2 down on the yard. The one you're thinking about was the older guy in the yard that had the heart issue.
He got put to the ground by the police officers for going over to that individual's house.
Yes, and he wouldn't,
and acting weird.
When the police pulled up, he didn't identify himself. So the police thought they just had an armed man approaching a door that didn't identify themselves.
Mm.
Yeah, that's Ohio, but that one's like 4 years old, 5 years old.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I thought it was
It
recent.
was a long time ago.
Yeah. Either way, we need to be involved because
I like that.
regardless, if someone shows up on your doorstep asking for your gun, I don't care who they are. You need to call us because that's a big ask.
I'm gonna buy one of those old cartoon pop guns with the cork on the string.
There you go. Yeah,
Serial numbered it myself.
You know, and
good idea.
we do get when you'll get some stores when someone does do a significant purchase, they'll buy a couple different guns in one day. That store
Really, I've never heard of such a thing happening.
yeah, every once in a while someone will go out. I've never had enough cash to go get it more than one in one day, but
It was expensive.
the ATF paperwork, a copy goes to the ATF, but a copy will come to us, and it's just for our information, and then we're done with it. The only reason we would ever do anything is if, and the purpose of some of these notifications, whether you're getting a silencer or what have you to your local law enforcement, is to the ATF just checking with you to make sure you don't have like a pending.
Yeah, you might have.
Yeah,
You might have popped him yesterday, and it hasn't run through the chain yet.
and it's not sitting on his criminal record, but yet it's pending, and yet he's stocking up.
Let me give my honest opinion. If a guy is, well, one, it's easy to lie on that. What is it, 2442?
Yeah,
What's the form? It's easy to lie on that, and it asks you if you're pending any criminal charges for domestic violence. Humna. It'd be also awful easy for a guy to lie on that, but that's why they do the background check of the name. But that's where I think it's good you guys come into play to say, have you had contact with this individual in the last?
yeah,
Yeah.
and any, it, even, and the vast majority of the time, in fact, of all the ones I've come across, I don't think we've made a single phone call to the ATF saying this guy's under investigation for restricted crimes that would restrict him. And so I think that's a testament to the quality of people we have in our community that are arming themselves. These people have a right to be armed and probably should be armed.
Last time I checked, highest armed county in the United States.
Yeah, and that's not anything to be ashamed of. That's that's
we don't see a lot of home invasions in this county. Shockingly.
yeah.
Have we ever had an incident where, like, hey, look, I'm just going to strap my AK and walk through Walmart's just in case? Has anyone ever had a problem with that?
I've not had one where they walked into Walmart, but we have had them where they're walking down Main Street, and in the past, the majority of the time, you stop, chat with them, and often it is actually someone that is just going over to someone's house and they're going to go shooting, and he doesn't have a car, and so
or just bought this at the pawn shop,
and
I wasn't driving when I bought it; I was walking,
and that's how he's getting his gear over to his friend's house so they can go out to the desert and shoot. And the majority of the time, that's what it is. It's just someone innocently carrying their rifle. And, we'll occasionally get the call where, with it being open carry, people will get a little concerned, someone's got a gun, and thought, well, are they threatening anyone with it? Because it's not illegal to have a gun. And, and so, but there are just some people that are feel threatened by the fact that they're armed, that they see an individual armed, and it's okay. That's with us being constitutional carry state now, it's probably actually solved some of it, because a lot of them are just carrying it concealed now.
Yeah. Another question about Utah, and this is for the general knowledge. Is Utah one of those states where a police officer can ask for identification under any circumstance, just to verify you, or how does it work in Utah? What should any of the viewers who have questions about when an officer approaches them, what should their compliance factor be on those non intervention contacts?
I would hope that the officer, for example, myself, when someone buys me a drink at the Holiday Oil, I'm going to say, well, "What's your name?" And just and say, "Thank you, Jared. I appreciate it." Yeah, but he's certainly not obligated to give me his name or anything like that. You really do have to have a reason for the detention to require the name.
Really? So Utah isn't one of those?
No.
Okay.
I can't walk up to David just out of the blue and say, "Let me see your ID, buddy." I have to have an articulable reason because that's a detention. As soon as you hand me your ID, you're not free to leave.
Yeah.
If you have a German accent, I just hand it over. I'm like, my papers are in order, so.
Hans Gruber.
Yeah. Hans Gruber, great show.
Yeah, I'm glad you recognize. Do you
Best
recognize
Christmas show
what I was
ever.
talking about?
I'm sure I've probably seen it. I've seen every German
Either you recognize
Nazi show.
it, right? It's not a German or Nazi show. Either you recognize it or you don't.
Okay, I'll have to brush up on that.
As Christmas approaches,
Most important,
it's the best Christmas show ever.
Most important Christmas show ever.
Yeah,
Christmas Vacation and Christmas Story are 2 and 3, but it is the most important.
Yeah. But yeah, you do. You have traffic stops, no brainer. You've got a violation. If they were a suspect of a possible shoplifting, you certainly have a right to stop, detain, and ask them. But as a friendly interaction, I would take exception for the officer asking for their ID or going beyond what. Do you mind me asking your name?
I'm the type as I would probably just hand it over. I'm not breaking the law, and I want to comply with them.
And I think a lot of people are fine with that. And if you willingly do it, I guess technically it's okay, but you don't necessarily have to.
I didn't know Utah's status specifically, but we're seeing a lot of minor city lawsuits around the nation boiling out of this specific question.
Yeah.
About an officer stopping someone because they're standing on the sidewalk filming something, and usually it's near a city building or something like that, but they're still on public property and not even marked, like they're in a parking lot. And they pull up, and they're doing it in states where you have to have an articulable suspicion to ask for ID. And they're asking for it and then demanding it and then arresting them for not giving it.
Yeah.
And they're saying, well, what am I being detained for? Well, I just want to know who you are.
Yeah.
And then they're like, in the state, you have to have then then they arrest them for obstruction. But the obstruction was because there was no
legitimate.
Yeah. And we're seeing this escalate around the nation. It's been a big thing lately.
No, I think Utah's ahead of the game on this. We have to have reasonable suspicion that you're in the commission of a crime, you have committed a crime, or you are about to commit a crime. And so for us to shake someone down, require their identification, that's the standard by which we would have to do that, because under reasonable suspicion, we can detain them. And then, of course, with probable cause, we can arrest them.
Yeah.
But, I wouldn't agree with any of my guys just in a casual encounter asking for the ID of someone. Now, if in the casual encounter they think, Jared, that's right, I think Jared has a warrant. And, to where just in the encounter, it escalates.
It might be a little different out here in Tooele because, you'd be hard stretched to find a deputy amongst your group of deputies to not have by visual sight know 60% of the county, and then you add that in, you've got Tooele City. Forget about Grantsville City. Even though Grantsville City isn't what it was 20 years ago when it was Grantsville boys police in the city. Now it's a little more
diverse.
Mixed in.
Yeah.
But, when I was in high school in Grantsville, the police officers knew every one of us.
Yeah.
Hamataki was my wrestling coach. Hatch lived around the corner. I mean, all of them. I knew, and they all knew me. Not a good thing, but they all knew me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, there's, it's interesting how sometimes crime is easily solved simply by knowing the community you police. I've met a kid at home before that stole a tailgate just because I saw him destroying his tailgate one night. And then the very next morning, I get a call where a red Chevy was missing a tailgate. And this lady says, "We just came out this morning and my husband's tailgate's gone." I said, "Oh, I know where it's at. I'll go get it." So
You couldn't have brought up a more Tooele County.
Well, yeah. What it was the kids were on Main Street, and I see all these sparks flying, and they were basically skiing on the tailgate behind his truck, destroying it. And so I knew he had a destroyed tailgate, and he drove this. It was a pretty nice pickup, and so the next, it was like the very next shift. This lady calls and says, "My husband's tailgate's missing, and it's a red Chevy truck."
That sounds like a Leave It to Beaver ad.
There are, 4 places in the nation where
where that's a
would
thing.
be the crime.
Yeah, and but no, when you know the community, sometimes you can almost beat them home.
Oh, that is hilarious. That is,
Yeah.
all right.
Looks like you got one more towards the tail end there
we got
about asset forfeiture.
First of all, Holly had to get after me. Holly, we want to see what 16-year-olds would bring to the national conversation. It would be amazing. It would be, what do they call it now? CAP? I believe that's the word that the children use today. Okay. Our sheriff was so important in maintaining our rights during COVID. Things could be so different without a strong sheriff. I completely agree. Would a warrant give them an option to search for all of your guns or just the initial requested ones?
Warrants have to be specific.
Yeah, that warrant, I was going to say it depends on.
Yeah, he would. I can't imagine a judge approving them to look beyond that of the weapons that they're investigating.
Unless they walk in the house and you've got all your guns lined up on the foyer walls, just leaning there. But
but then that kind of falls into the plain view type of.
Yeah, that's
doctrine.
the plain view. Yeah. So but then they'd still have to flip them, find the serial, read the serial, write it down. They claim they have to check when a person purchases more than one gun on the same day. And I have in my life purchased a firearm or two. And once upon a time, I bought 3 in the same day, and I haven't been put on a record, but then again, I bought them because I'd been saving up for them. One was a muzzleloader. One, we'll just say all 3 were muzzleloaders. And
I don't think muzzle loaders raise a red flag.
let's just keep going on the muzzleloader.
Were they assault muzzleloaders?
Assault muzzleloaders. Yeah. But no, I drew out for the muzzleloader this year in Box Elder. So you can picture me being sad come November because I'm not going to see a deer at all. I guarantee it. I don't know anything about Box Elder. Okay. Buy your guns 8 days apart to avoid the ATF being notified of your purchase. Well, we got a strong sheriff, so I'm not worried about the ATF. Please explain civil asset forfeiture. Other counties, city departments are being sued for taking cash from traffic stops when the person wasn't charged with a crime. It isn't illegal to carry a large amount of cash. How is this still happening? And more often nationwide every year.
Civil asset forfeiture.
That's the big complicated one. Our president wrote it according to him. And then you got the sharing program with the feds where it becomes an orgy of debauchery with the feds between the whether it's police or sheriffs or state and the feds, where the feds come in and actually reinforce their case. It's hard.
Well, and there's always legislation up on Capitol Hill concerning asset forfeiture. And I think, in all honesty, I think eventually it will disappear in its entirety. But again, it's not that there's never been an error or a overreach in Utah, but Utah does a pretty good job. The majority of the time, which the last time I checked was 90% of the time, criminal charges do follow. So it's not a case of where there's very little to time. But even at that, the process of the forfeiture is such that it's not simply a unilateral decision by law enforcement. There's a due process for getting it. However, the process is extensive enough to where I don't believe I'm aware of us doing it in Tooele County in years. It is, and so we don't. I was going to say for that orgy, as you called it, of money and stuff,
evil debauchery.
We're not very loyal contributors to that. But
what, you don't send money to the feds? What is it? I heard it was an 80-20 deal with the feds is what's going on right now.
I don't know the exact number, but essentially what happens is whatever gets turned over to the feds, and then it's trickle down money that goes to the state. And so the Commission of Criminal and Juvenile Justice, they take in the money, and then they have a formula for distributing it to the different task force across the state. And we do have a task force that participates in some of them funds to run some of our interdiction programs. And but part of the reason for the pooling and then the formula for distribution is they don't want you to benefit directly from what they don't want, what they call pay to play. So they don't want
it to look bad like it did 10 years ago when El Paso, I think it was the chief, so not a sheriff, wrote to them when they said, but we couldn't afford our popcorn and nacho bar without it. He wrote that on a sheet of letterhead and sent that up the chain.
Wow.
Do you have a popcorn and nacho bar?
We do not.
I think you should.
I guess, I'm not sure that it would help us at all in doing our job. Well, it might just make us
wouldn't work with
than we already
patrolling. But I'll tell you what, the sheriff's office would be plenty busy. Be deputies and me, because I rather like nachos. Not a big popcorn fan, but nachos, they draw me in.
Especially if you got the good cheese. If you got a good cheese.
If it's even a little bit spicy, it's a good cheese. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah, and so asset forfeiture has been battled over and over, and they've got it. It's pretty locked up within our state, and it's not that it's not doable, but it's got such a process involved in it that in all likelihood, if it's being accomplished, it's there's good reason.
I would like to see it done where there is, if they're going to do it, I'd like to see a time limit on it. Mm-hmm. So it's a restriction of use for the owner. I would even go as far as to say that a penalty is paid from the restricting organization to the owner of the asset or money, but they have a time limit. If charges aren't brought within 6 months,
I think that's fair.
Then it's got to be released and an interest is paid for
accrued. Yeah,
right.
And the officer that did it has to go over and mow the person's lawn or something like that.
How many?
No, you don't want to do that, because I want to tell you this right now. I would see how tall grass can get. I would make that look like Vietnam. That officer would be out there deep in the Iadrang Valley by the time I was done growing my lawn.
Yeah.
I would be doing science experiments.
You'd grow bamboo.
Can I get elephant grass?
Yeah, and
But-
I don't know how much resistance there would be on Capitol Hill for such a language in a bill to change it to require that, because I would anticipate most cases that go to asset forfeiture without charges, that would be sufficient time for them to
Yeah.
determine.
I mean, even
Go
if
through the
they're building a
process.
RICO case, usually that's done prior to
Right.
your, because you're building something different than they're just selling drugs. You're building, and the RICO cases are the ones that generally take a very long time to build.
Yeah.
And by very long time, I'm saying 7 months is probably the average.
Yeah, and if you're starting to seize that stuff on a RICO case, most of your investigation that would fulfill the requirements for RICO should probably be done a little bit before arrests start being
Yeah,
made.
you could start pushing charges against those items,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I went once upon a time. I went through the DEA drug interdiction course, and that opened up my eyes a lot to the status of our. I think our drug interdiction system is, personal opinion, our war on drugs has failed. We lost. We need to recognize that. It's a boondoggle that has corrupted our police, corrupted our courts, and it's put a barrier between, I think, what would be good policing. I think it's caused a barrier where there's been a rift that had to be built to perform this war on drugs, where I think we could have had better outcomes had we operated this different. Just my personal opinion.
Sure.
But I remember they were telling us a story in there about one of the cartels built a speedboat that the DEA couldn't even catch with planes or helicopters. And so the DEA knew who it was, approached him, and begged and bought the speedboat for $2 million, whatever. Right? They asked him, can we buy that?
Mm-hmm.
So we can chase down everyone else. And then the cartel went back down to South America with however much they paid for it and built a bigger, faster speedboat. And we're back at it like a week later.
Yeah.
And so the DA has this boondoggle of a speedboat that can't catch the new one they just bought.
Yeah.
But you got to imagine, like, how much fun would it be to drive something like that?
Oh, I imagine it was a blast, you know, but it's just, it's interesting. Even when I went through that course, I'll tell you more about it offline. It's just interesting. It's not something they need to. Anyways, let's run through the last list. We've had the sheriff for almost 2 hours.
I know you're a trooper. I'll tell you that.
You really are. You really are.
Well, the time flies, I guess, when you're having fun.
Holly is hammering you hard. Don't let him in. She's talking about and that's a true point. Unless they have a warrant, don't let him in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a policy, you know. Charges should be required to be filed, and the owner should get their day in court, yes, in a timely manner, yes. Please ask the sheriff about all he has done to keep his deputies. He has been fighting very hard to make their wages competitive and keep them in the county.
Oh, that's a good question. I
Have you thought about a nacho machine?
It's probably more affordable than the other options, so it's probably worth a try.
I think instead of that having been provided by civil asset forfeiture, we start a raffle for the general populace. You know, do you have young bachelor deputies?
Yeah, I think there's a couple.
I think we could have a bachelor night.
I don't know. That sounds
Easy
like,
killer.
That sounds like it would go south in a
Rent
hurry.
some deputies out for
I might
dates.
get clickbait or something.
Yeah.
You know.
When the wage wars started, which really ramped up last June, not this most recent June, but June of 2021, when Salt Lake City started announcing and West Valley started. Well, Salt Lake City announced, and then everyone else started to chase their tail because cities, their budget year runs from July 1 to June 30th. And so sheriff's offices, we're all January to December. So we're watching this battle go on. And in the process, we're all challenged with, we don't get to do much with our budgets between
So you have like a
mid
6-month
budget
window.
year. Yeah. And so, so one of the things we were able to do, because we did have a surplus in our salaries line item, and I was able to work with the council, and they, in concert with my request, they were able to approve a $6,000 bonus, a retention bonus, and at the same time we had a pay study going on that they launched roughly in September, and so but the pay study didn't come back until April time period, and but it did allow us to keep the vast majority of our deputies. I think we lost, and they had to sign an agreement that they would stick with us or pay a prorated amount back.
Was that to get that bonus?
Yeah, and so it was pretty effective at keeping our numbers where we needed them while these wage wars and our study went on. Now our study came back, and it got implemented in April, May time period, and while it's better than it was, is it going to match? It doesn't really quite keep pace. You know, where we're, our starting wage is decent, but where we really lose ground is at the 5-year and up mark. The veteran officers really
It's the worst place to lose
yeah,
it.
and the bottom line was the county simply didn't have the money to accomplish what needed to happen more than what they did. And so, we've worked hard for it. We've had some pretty heated conversations over it. And so, but it's going to be a never ending battle if these wage wars continue. West Valley was the talk of the town this most recent July 1, because they start a new guy out at over $30 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so
So you're thinking
30.
about heading over the other side of the mountain, giving up the old.
well, that is one of the things that I do share with my staff is, you can go make that money, but then you're working on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
got to
mean,
be a lot harder working in
that's-
West Valley than Tooele.
Oh, well, definitely. West Valley and Ogden and downtown Salt Lake are probably, but if you're an ambitious young law enforcement officer,
That's where you want to be.
they want that.
Yeah. And that just gives them one more leg to stand on to make that decision.
Well, that gives them the experience. That gives them the excitement. That gives them the opportunities to, move into different positions. I want to say there, Holly seconds me. That's what that looks like to me. Jared, she's seconding me on the young bachelor. Bachelor. What do you call it when bachelor auction? Oh, what is it called? They used to have them.
I didn't attend one.
What'd they call it when they used to auction off the young?
I've been married so long, I don't remember those days.
Our sheriff has been relentless in fighting for his staff. We are lucky to have him. I second that. Yeah.
But yeah, and it'll be an ongoing fight for the next few years. The bottom line is there's just such a shortage of people getting into this profession. Just to give you an example, when I first tested with Tooele City, there were 68 of us for one position. And that was a time where you were lucky to get the call and get on with the police department. And now we'll announce and we'll have 20 applications. And when we announce physical fitness day to come test, we might get 4 or 5 of them that show up and actually mean business. And so it's been a challenge. You take the Department of Corrections. Part of the reason all the jails are so full of inmates is because they can't open up an awful lot of the new prison because they don't have the staff to do it. Even they're pulling from everywhere. They're pulling from their AP&P divisions. They're doing mandatory overtime shifts so that they can fill these shifts. And so it's a widespread. It's not even just statewide. It is national.
Yeah. What do you think's caused that?
I think there's
Do you think the dial back of maybe going to war nationally might have caused that?
I think there's I don't think there's any one thing. I think it's a combination of things. I think there's certainly the media's not been good to us.
Yeah. Hold
Say
on.
that.
How dare you disparage the good
Yeah.
name of the media?
And while there's law enforcement are human, they're going to make some mistakes out there.
Mm-hmm.
But the bashing we took or the beating we took was
You didn't deserve
undeserved.
No.
And especially in Utah, when you've got a George Floyd happen a couple thousand miles away,
And they flipped that cop car over,
yeah,
and that they them is that correct? And it's on fire under it, and on camera the news crew is yonder pointing the camera at you, and you pull your pants down and squat to.
That person had a mental disorder, Jared.
Yeah.
That person had all of the mental disorders, Dave. Not a mental, all of them. Tick them all off. Down the board.
I mean, it's not like that person had an ideology or a cause.
And
It was a mental disorder.
yeah.
And I don't know, maybe video games as well it contributes to it
Yeah.
because
I think video
no
games
one-
are great. It keeps people at home in their house themselves.
You know, it is made a change at the first time in history we've seen marriage rates dropped and violent crimes didn't go up in comparative.
Yeah.
First time in history.
That's right. Women have to actually work for their. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it just is not, for whatever reason, it might be a generational thing. We're just not getting the guys that have dreamed of being a cop their entire, grew up playing cops and robbers, and they want to come and do it for real. And but the good thing is sometimes sometimes you just get these awesome individuals. Like we got one kid. He's actually going through the parade, and I was handing out sticker badges, and I just kidded him. He looked like a sharp kid, fresh out of the military, and he says, "Hey, Sheriff, can I have a sticker?" I said, "Sure. You got to turn in an application, though." And no kidding, he did.
Outstanding.
And he's got a start date with us. And,
Was his last name Valerio?
yeah, I think it was.
Good.
Yeah. Or I don't know if I want to identify anyone on that, but but just a just sharp kid, and
I sent him your way.
and we so we get these beacons of light and hope that and that's another thing is we have been relentless in not compromising the class of officer we're going to put out to the public, because even though we have a shortage nationwide, you still need a quality guy that shows up to take your call. You still need a quality guy you're sending into God knows what situation, and we feel we've done that, and we feel we've put together a culture of performance base where good performance is rewarded, poor performance is
Shown the door.
yeah. Well, compliance is always better if you can get it, but there's just some times when if you can't get compliance, it is time to push them on.
Yeah.
And that's not a job you can really give third or fourth chances. You know what I mean? It is a tough job. And I look at the Derek Chauvin case. I mean, you're saying that he deserved it. I'm saying that. Look,
I'm not
I think
saying
the guy,
he deserved it. No.
I'm going to argue in favor of him. If I was in charge, I would not have
Here's my thoughts
come
on
down
Derek
hard
Chauvin.
on him.
I never said he deserved. Matter of fact, I said Derek Chauvin. Okay. His physical restraint, his physical body. We got a fly that entered the house. His physical body restraint on the guy, for as long as he had it, was wrong. But let's remember that he had a herd of people yelling at him at the time, and everyone recording him. And when I watch that video, he looks like a deer in the headlights.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like he got into a position, and because of all the attention. Now, did he make a mistake by not being prepared for that? Sure, but how do you prepare someone for that?
That is every agency in the nation used
Mhm.
that Chauvin case as a teaching moment. Because I pulled my guys aside. I said, look, you had a cop that had lost his cool.
Yeah.
And we need to take care of each other.
Well, Salt Lake.
There should have been another cop. I don't care if he had to tackle him.
Yep.
Yeah, just to get,
The hard part
he
was
needed cool off time, and that was just one of them. That was unfortunate because one of them or any of them didn't do that very thing. They faced charges as well.
Yep. And there's Salt Lake is dealing with that right now for that young lady that died 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just came out the coroner report and physical restraint. I think right now law enforcement needs to take a step back and say, okay, we've got to redesign the way we do physical restraint.
And then the legislation it brought about, even in our own state.
Oh yeah.
Oh my hell! Sorry for my language, but
you're fine.
It's a place.
They brought on. They made chokeholds. Unless a deadly force situation, you can't apply a chokehold. But
Has that been an issue in Utah?
no.
What one
That's what's funny. Is,
was George Floyd put in a chokehold
No.
at any given point in time?
That's what
And
was so
I'll
frustrating.
tell you right
about
now,
it.
George Floyd, if I do the math on it, 70% meth killed him, or the fentanyl, the meth, all the drugs, and
And he had COVID.
Chauvin was just an accessory to the drugs killing him. The amount of drugs, that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a coroner. I am not a judge. I am not a law enforcement officer. Matter of fact, I'm a person with an IQ of around 52.
Oh, you've got high 70s. Come
I
on.
am what the Army would call the functioning retard. But
Careful not to use the R word.
it's
People
an
get
official
upset.
Army term. But I do believe, I think Chauvin got a raw deal in the end. But it was a heightened time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Chauvin, honestly, I don't know how you respond to this. Chauvin, he was a 9-year decorated officer. He did have some complaints, but nothing really out of the norm. So he didn't seem like a bad officer on his record. And he kneeled on this guy. Now, I know there was argument in the press that he knew him outside of they worked together as security guards or something.
Who? George Floyd?
And George.
Yeah.
Work together.
As
kidding.
security guards at like a nightclub.
Wow.
But that could also make it a little different. Where if I know someone personally, I may think I know their limits more physically and mentally, where fentanyl changes that equation totally.
Yeah, and I hate to speculate because I'm not a coroner either, or a medical examiner.
That
or
would be a
anyone that
tough job. We don't talk about a terrible job. That'd be awful.
Yeah,
Seems like on all the TV shows, they only work at night.
that's true.
The guy is always eating a sandwich over a.
There's no nacho
that
bar
happen?
there, huh?
Yeah,
There ain't no nacho bar. It's just nacho body bar. But yeah.
but go back to one of your questions. Has been choking people out been a problem in Utah? That our policy prior to the law that the legislature passed, that they kind of grandstanded as preventing a George Floyd from ever happening in Utah, even though there was no chokehold applied. Our policy at the time was you had to be trained in the carotid chokehold in order to use it. So our policy didn't afford you the option to use it outside of a deadly force situation anyway.
So it was like the taser. You had to be trained in the taser to carry the taser.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you guys even have I'm sure in post they cover taser and pepper spray now. Or OC.
They do OC. We do taser once they get to us.
Okay.
And so,
taser.
taser training day is the favorite day because everyone crowds around and
Do you guys
watches.
videotape each other
yes.
and laugh about
You
it
guys
later?
get tased.
Freaking YouTube it.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter had a go to work with a parent day with her school. And so we put her through the taser training. We did not tase her.
Oh.
We did not tase her.
How old?
She was 13. I think she's 13. And so, but she came in and
She's a 13-year-old. That
she
would have been.
she enjoyed watching our new guys
Get
ride
tased.
ride the lightning, as we call it.
Yeah, I have been tased. It's an interesting thing that you're conscious and nothing works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just literally you become
How many volts is that?
you become a slave to gravity.
50,000.
Oh, that's nothing. I bought tasers for 150,000.
Well, and you know, as they say, it's the amps that kill you.
Yeah, it's the answer.
But the you know, it's the longest 5 seconds of your life, and at least it was for me. And I don't need to do it again. But I also don't need to do pepper spray again either. I thought that was horrible.
But you want to watch it every year.
Yeah, and,
Every year.
yeah, because there's that sick thing in every cop's head
It's
that's
that train wreck.
Yeah.
You gotta watch it.
yeah.
You can't turn away.
But yeah, taser training's always fun.
Well, to close out the show, is there anything you want to say to the audience that maybe we didn't cover?
We still have 2 more also before.
You know, in all honesty, serving as sheriff has been the most humbling experience of my life. You know, when you have the public putting in such a level of trust in you that it's a very humbling experience to serve at the behest of the voter, and we've always put our best foot forward, and we've always done the best job we know how to do, and we look forward to the opportunity to do it again, and see how things shake out in November.
I like it. Okay, 2 more questions, and we're closing this down. Did you give that young man a sticker?
He got a sticker.
All right, he got a sticker, and he filled out the application.
Yeah, and we're gonna get him a real badge here.
Better hire him before I get him on Tooele. Just saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't always that way in the sheriff's office. Wimmer required a high standard, and those who were serving are exceptional deputies, dispatchers, and correctional officers. In Stansbury, we always have. Oh, got to roll down. We always have someone close at any time. Sorry, I've been drinking, guys. Thanks to Wimmer opening the substation, we have great deputies who are very involved with our community. Thank you for your leadership, Sheriff Wimmer.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And, you know, the substation to me was a no-brainer. The bank was willing to, you know, that had been arranged to some degree, but it wasn't, they had stopped taking advantage of that free real estate because we pay nothing.
The bank gives you some basement.
Yep. They gave us some basement space, and obviously all the equipment, the computers in there are ours, but it's a easy place to be. The guys can go there, do reports, have lunch, and they're in close proximity to the communities that demand the most. You know,
Let's face it,
Stansbury, Erda, Lake Point.
Stansbury Park is probably their dominant response area.
Yeah.
It's the largest community, most populous, that is unincorporated. I mean, Erda now, you know, now that they're incorporated, and we chatted about Erda a little bit beforehand. I don't want to let any of that out, but I feel a lot better after talking to you about that.
Yeah. And that's something that, you know, as sheriff, that is going to be a delicate balance as we move forward, because with Erda, currently we contract with them to provide police services, but we got Lake Point coming on. They're going to get a council this November. And so what are they going to do? And I really think Stansbury is on the doorstep of an incorporation themselves.
I think if Stansbury didn't have the puddle behind 30 to 40% of the houses that occupied your time when you weren't at work, they would already have incorporated. But they have enough release their energy time that they haven't boiled over thinking about political stuff.
And so this is going to be a balancing act of, you know, what are your staffing levels as, you know, and what are these cities going to do? Are they going to contract with the sheriff, or are they going to contract with another police agency? Or are they going to start their own police agency? And so this is going to be challenging for the next few years as we really determine what what's Tooele County Sheriff policing thereafter?
You might be the largest sheriff's department if they keep contracting with you like they're doing.
We'll see.
We just need Stockton to come on board.
Yeah. Well, we have a great relationship with
Yeah.
Chief Romney down there, and so we have no, and I actually don't, I hate to drag us on longer, but I'm not a big fan of contracting. And in fact, when Erda approached me about it, I said, I don't think you'll agree to the contract. I will. And they go, well, why not? I said, because it makes no sense to be independently elected and then contract that authority away in any way, shape, or form and make
True.
you some sort of influence over how I police. I said, so the only contract I agree to is we police you as we currently are, and I'm the decision maker when it comes to law enforcement decisions. And they actually said, that's fine with us. And so if you're good with that, then I'm good letting, because I can't enter into an agreement, into a contract. That has to be council approved. And but they really can't contract me without me saying, yes, I'm good to go.
You kind of give input on your
Yes.
end on what you can sustain, and then the council.
And it says a lot about your character too, that they're so willing to say yes.
Well, and I hope so, because the same would go for Lake Point if they approached me about can we enter an agreement with you, Sheriff Wimmer, and that would be the conversation I'd have with them as well. And so apparently Erda was happy with the level of service that we were providing and our responsiveness, and they stuck with us. And we'll see what Lake Point decides to do. Who knows? There are lots of options.
If they don't, I want to float an idea. If you guys don't go with Tooele County Sheriffs, man, Lake Point and Stansbury are so close, and even Erda, I could see them building a metro police department between the three. And I think that would probably be their most efficient way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and in all honesty, the most efficient way really is to continue to, or the most cost effective is to just stick with the sheriff's office.
Well, yeah, you're already there.
Yeah, we're there. Because then there's going to be the debates. Well, where's the police station? How many do we need, and how do we hire them in a time when it's very challenging to hire? And so, in order for, say, if they developed a metro police department between the three communities, if they were to, in order to steal the experience needed to start a new police department, the salaries would have to be pretty healthy.
Starting salary,
Yeah.
$28, $30 an hour.
And then, when you look at what it costs them to equip it.
It's a high starting salary. That's a high starting
What did you say?
$28, $30 an hour, probably.
And that's for street cop.
Yeah.
That you haven't even
Yeah,
hired
what
a
would
chief.
yes.
And it'd be a reasonably sized department. You got to figure that'd probably be a 25
Oh, yeah.
to 30-man
Well,
department.
for one, Stansbury's populated,
Mhm.
and then the area. I mean, that'd be the
'Cause-
size of Tooele area wise.
Yeah, and don't quote me on. I think Grantsville, they're policing a community similar in size to Stansbury, and I think they have 15, 16 officers.
I think it's 16 to 19.
Yeah, in that community, and Stansbury's probably not going to need many less than that. And
No.
so you throw on Lake Point and Erda, you're going to end up probably mid-20s on manpower.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That ends up being I mean, they got to pay for it one way or the other, whether they're paying the sheriff's office or they start their own.
Yeah, and that's the question. I personally, if I was them, I'd say continue with the sheriff's office. Let's bolster that. As far as law enforcement goes, I am a fan of an elected sheriff, a person that's outside of the scope of the city governments and that, but also, responsive to the populace.
Thank you. And our goal is to keep building on what we've been building for the last 7 years, and taking us into the future of these unknown things, such as what are we going to do once they incorporate? What are we going to do with?
What are you going to do
growth.
when you've got to incorporate into the metaverse, into the Mark Zuckerberg's virtual reality? You have VR sheriffs. They clock into work and put their headset
Fact checkers.
You know, when we, after 9/11, they started doing all them air marshals on airplanes. Maybe I'd be a space marshal.
Space
Marshal. I like it.
Yeah.
Virtual marshal.
Yeah.
Give you a holographic badge. All right, everyone, thanks for joining us. Let's thank Sheriff Wimmer. And again, he's running. So, you've got 2 options coming in November, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, you've met them both here on the show. Any more questions, reach out to them or reach out to us. We'll bring them back on anytime.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and notice us on YouTube or all those other wonderful locations. Where are we, Jared? We're on BitChute. We're on Rumble. We're on what else?
BitChute, Rumble, all of the podcatchers, Apple, BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, and
We're there.
Spotify. And if you find a place we're not, reach out to me. I'll get us on there within a day. But all the places that, I know of, we're on. Thanks for throwing your comments or your questions to the sheriff. That helps out a lot because, again, IQ 51. Dave's quite a bit smarter, but he doesn't talk as much. So it really strains us on the good questions. We need you guys showing up to the party.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
And you're welcome. You're welcome on any time. Even if you just want to sit in your office and say, "Hey, can you get a message out for me?"
Okay.
You can like if you've got a barbecue coming up or the bachelor night when you're selling off some of your young deputies, you can reach out. We will for free throw an ad up.
Or if you got tacos and nachos coming out at the bar.
And if nachos show up at the sheriff's office, give us a call.
I don't know. We're pretty conscientious about what we spend. It'd probably be popcorn.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, so
Yeah. Got hurt.
sorry.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.